Welcome to Death and Aliens, an in-depth look at horror and sci-fi TV from two friends who vaguely know what they're doing. I'm Courtney.
And I'm MK.
I was like, I'm ready, and then I started adjusting my computer, and I was like, okay, I'm only kind of
Not
ready.
just
Um,
kidding. I
just
just
kidding,
thought
I'm
you
not ready at
forgot
all.
because you
Oh,
almost forgot earlier.
I did almost forget earlier. No, I remembered this time. I just said I was ready and lied. So
Okay.
it's fine. It's fine. How are you?
Honestly, super great, but also had like the worst day ever yesterday.
Oh.
Um, so this week I received my first full FabFitFun box.
Oh yeah.
And in my FabFitFun box, I got a Nine West travel hanging bag that I picked out. I got a new lemon face wash. I got two different hair masks that I'm really excited about. And then my two surprises. One was a bottle of sunscreen, which is only really funny because there's a 0% chance I would ever buy myself sunscreen, but I definitely should have some.
Definitely need it. Yeah, for sure.
And then the other one were these really cute Jessica Simpson sunglasses.
I love those.
And I've been wearing Dan's like Spy Kid glasses for the last like 3 months.
Yeah, you have.
So I'm just like really excited to have my own sunglasses.
Oh, I
Um,
love that.
I also finally, after 2 years, replaced my Samsung watch. Um,
Hmm.
and if you'll remember from the weekend that I had the horrible like issues with my car, I had gone to a Mary Kay event with my sister, and I ordered my starter kit for my Mary Kay face like line with the
Nice.
nighttime cream and the
Hmm.
daytime cream and all that. And she threw in two lipsticks and a bigger traveling hanging bag.
Nice. One of those black roll-up ones that's pink on the inside.
Yes.
I love those.
Yes.
Yep.
But I have the full size set with the night creams, the day creams, and the microdermabrasion stuff. But then I also got a travel size of the night creams and the day creams to take with me on my trip.
Nice.
And then I got two new lipsticks and the big travel bag. And
Oh,
this week, my June Ipsy bag will come in, which will technically be my first Ipsy bag since renewing it, since my May bag got sent to the wrong address and then had to
oh,
get,
right.
I never got it. So
Rerouted. Yeah.
it's rerouted back to North Carolina and I will never see it again. Um,
Well, you know.
well, and I looked at Ipsy's like how to fix that situation. And basically, because my address was not changed, um,
In time.
prior to the delivery, I can't do anything about it.
Well, that's like a real bummer, especially since it got returned.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh.
So, but so this week was all about packages, which
Hmm.
was
Hmm.
lovely. But then yesterday, I watched the very upsetting episode of American Horror Story that you guys listened to me rant about last week.
Yeah.
And then I went to see Jagged Little Pill, the musical, which, first of all, the mom in Jagged Little Pill was played on tour by Heidi Blickenstaff, who I don't know if you know, but
I don't.
Heidi Blickenstaff was in the show Title of Show, which is like one that nobody ever knows anything about of. That was like an off-Broadway show that I am obsessed with. And then she also was the original wife of Bottom in Something Rotten. Like,
Oh, I have only seen, I saw that in Long Island.
yeah, but you know the right hand man, that song, that is was her on in the Broadway cast.
Oh,
And she was
nice.
phenomenal. Also on tour, the son in the family is played by Dylan Clenna, who was in a show in LA with one of my really good friends from college, but is also the younger brother of the original Broadway of that character, Derek Clenna.
Oh, that's so cute.
So it's really cool. But the show, for those of you who don't know anything about it, is heavy as shit. There is not a light moment. Like there's some really good jokes, but there's not a light moment. It is about racism and family dynamics and rape and drug overdose and addiction and sexuality. And like if there's a topic that needs to be discussed uncomfortably, it is absolutely in this show. But the family behind me thought it would be a really good idea to bring their preteen children to the show, despite the fact that I got at least 8 emails this week reminding people that the show is for 14 plus. The kids then put their legs over the seats in the theater to the row behind them, which of course led me to giving them the world's dirtiest look. Then during intermission, when I went to the restroom, I came back and I walked past them while they were talking shit about the dirty looks I was giving them and laughing at the fact that I was giving them dirty looks. So then when we sat back down, I literally turned around to the like 15-year-old girl and I go, just so you know, laughing about being disrespectful is a really bad look and you might not want to do that anymore. She then
You should have been
was
like, by the way, I work here. I'm allowed to tell you you can't do
I literally,
this.
it took everything in me. Dan was like, do you want to go grab one of the usher captains? Like, do you want to tell somebody that you work with? I was like, no, I just want them to understand that even if I didn't work here, that's not how you act in a fucking theater.
Right. Absolutely.
Um, and luckily, after I said that, the mom also like was like, get it together. So, and then they were fine
Good.
for the whole second act. And then at the end of the show, they booked it out of there before there was a chance for a confrontation.
Yeah, I
Then
bet
I
they did.
left, and after having like 5 hours of really intense emotional trauma in the day and not having any coffee, I ended up with, and we talked a couple episodes ago about the air quality having been shit the
Yeah.
last couple of weeks. The combination of all of that led me to have one of the worst migraines I've had in like 3 years, to the point where I vomited and like could not
Mhm.
even keep pain pills down. So I missed Dan's concert last night, and but we laughed about the fact that I didn't go see him sing a requiem because I was dying. So it,
That is apropos. I
yeah.
feel like.
But so like I'm like weirdly like school's almost over. I'm actually like treating myself. I'm getting stuff. I was on the phone with Bree a bunch this week, making sure everything is planned for the trip. I'm renting a car when we're in London, just to drive from London to Birmingham because it costs the same as trying to deal with trains out of the city.
Yeah,
And then Dan was freaking out. He was like, "Are you going to be able to drive on the other side of the road?" And I go, "I did live somewhere for 3 years that they drove
that's
on the
true.
other side of the road. So if anyone can do it without a lot of practice, it'd be me."
Right.
I go,
Like you're at
but
least used
that
to the idea of it.
yeah, which also, but then that also means that I will be driving the whole time that we
Right.
have the car. And we all know how he feels about me driving. So like it's gonna be great. Um
I can't wait for post-trip discussions.
oh yeah, but all of that's very exciting because this episode actually comes out the day I leave.
Yay!
But yeah, so I'm like, everything is going well, except that my body is giving up on me, so that's fine.
Yeah. This episode comes out the day before I leave. Nope,
Mm,
I leave on the first now. I forgot I booked my plane the first instead of the 30th. But very close, very close.
yes.
I'm also
Um,
gonna piggyback off of you and tell you about my week. So I haven't gotten my FabFitFun box yet, unless that's what that bell was, the
mm,
buzzer that I just
mm.
got something in the mail. I don't know if you all heard the chaos because my mic is usually pretty good about blocking out some of it.
I heard a little bit, but mostly I only heard Sadie reacting to it.
Okay, yeah. She it was a lot longer than that. But so that's good. That's good. Yeah, so maybe that was my box. Who knows? But I did order an add-on for FabFitFun, which is this little like thing here. It's got a
Yeah.
pocket and it's got like cup holders to put on my couch. It's got my
Oh,
keys on it right now, nothing exciting.
I love
Because I keep
that.
spilling stuff on my couch, you know? And
Yeah.
so now I have something to keep my drinks in for when I'm like vegged out and I don't have a lot of like I don't have like an end table or anything crazy like that.
Yeah. Because
So it also helps
your
me
apartment doesn't
with
actually have
storage.
room for end tables.
Right, right. So I got that and I've been using this actually was from I think my last FabFitFun box, but I didn't use it. It's a eye cream that I've
Nice.
been trying to use. So if I'm looking brighter these days, that's why. I've
That's
only
the
used it like
only
for four
that's the
days.
only thing I'm really upset about my May Glam bag. The mascara that I
Mm-hmm.
wanted and
Oh yeah.
the eye brightening cream. Those are the only
Mm-hmm.
two that I'm like bummed that I didn't get the bag because of.
Yeah,
But
I totally get that. Yeah, this is truffle therapy eye serum. So it's like super fancy and I'll never be able to afford to buy it again because it came with my FabFitFun box. But I'm using the heck out of it now.
right.
But also I went to a show this week that I thought I already talked about, and I very much did not because it happened in between recordings. But today, as we're recording, the Tonys are in like 5 hours. And so I was trying to catch all my Tony shows, and I saw Goodnight Oscar this week,
Which is
which
what the
was
last one that you hadn't seen yet?
no, I haven't seen Some Like It Hot either.
Oh,
I
okay.
haven't seen some of the ones that just came out. So like Camelot's Learner or Learner in Lowe's Camelot, I haven't seen. I didn't see Cost of Living while it was here. I didn't see Between Riverside and Crazy while it was here.
Hmm.
But I think for the most part I'd seen a good majority of them. But yeah, so Goodnight Oscar, I went and saw it's got Sean Hayes in it, which is why I've been saying just check every day for the rest of my life now.
Yeah.
Um, and the show itself is fine. It's enjoyable. It's
Yeah.
fine. But Sean Hayes, really, really, really incredible in that role. And like all the actors were really good. Like Marshall Davis is in it, and he is one of the guys who used to come into the bar all the time. And I know I've talked about this because he was in Ain't No Mo. He just came out with a show called Reality on HBO Max that he's in, like a couple weeks back. But yeah, so I went and saw it. And it was really good. Sean Hayes really nailed the part, and it was show wise not my favorite show I've ever seen, but cast wise they all did an incredible job.
Love that.
So I was glad I got to see it, and it was my last show before the Tonys. I did win tickets to Peter Pan Goes Wrong on Friday, but with the air quality, I was like, maybe I'll skip this one.
Which is
maybe
upsetting
I'll
because I've
pass.
heard Peter Pan Goes Wrong is
I know,
phenomenal.
I know, but I think Ellie Kemper is coming to be they have like a guest role in it every time. It started with Neil Patrick
Yeah.
Harris. I don't know who it is right now, but I think Ellie Kemper starts this next week. So I was like, maybe I'll get it again soon. But I
That
didn't
would
hear about that
be
till after I turned down the tickets. But yeah, so I was like, I probably should breathe as opposed to
fair.
doing the
Very
show.
fair.
Um, yeah, so things are good and bad right now for everyone, and we're just trying to make it day to day. And if you could add a little something that helps us make it in our day to day lives.
Sure. This quote says, "You have enemies? Good. That means you've stood up for something sometime in your life." Victor Hugo.
Love it, love it. I actually
Yeah,
have heard that one before. I like a good Victor Hugo quote.
me
Um,
too.
but yeah, I love it. Well, um, to bring everything down again, we're talking American Horror Story season 1, episode 11 today, which is just titled Birth. It aired December 14th, 2011. It was rated 8.4 out of 10, which is the same as last week.
Yep.
The number one song is still We Found Love. However, the number one movie is Sherlock Holmes Game of Shadows, which I
Oh,
don't think I ever watched.
I
So
did.
it was
Um,
Robert Downey Jr.,
yes.
which I
Robert
do
Downey
love.
Jr. Oh God, Jude Law played Watson.
Yeah,
And that the Game of Shadows is the second one, so that's the one Rachel McAdams was in.
yeah. I think I watched the first one like on a band trip once. So like I don't even remember it well, but I did at
Okay.
least watch it. Um but yeah, I mean it's post Iron Man Robert Downey Jr., so I'm sure it's phenomenal.
Oh yeah, it's a great. I mean, it's the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes in my mind are nowhere near the Benedict Cumberbatch Sherlock Holmes
Sure.
stuff,
Hmm.
but they're they're really good actually.
I need to go watch them. I bet I'd like them.
I think you
Yeah, and
would.
the number one book is The Drop by Michael Connolly. And he's another one. I don't remember if we've talked about him before. I don't love his series, but I mean, it's just the style is not my favorite, but he's the writer who created Bosch. So
Okay.
he wrote the book series for Bosch and was the screenwriter on the TV show, or like he was the teleplay on the TV show and was very involved through the entire series. I think it's done now, but if it's not, he's still involved. So, um, on this day, some interesting things happened. The UN met and had a new treaty to limit carbon emissions 12
Great.
years ago, and we're
Great.
still
And the world is
getting
still on
worse.
fire.
Yes, literally on fire because we haven't figured it out yet. 12 years
Yeah.
later. It's fine. Um, in 1799, it was the day George Washington died.
Hmm.
But my most exciting fact of today is that as of 2000, this day has become known as World Monkey Day.
Ugh, I love it.
I love it. It was like these two people who were studying at, I don't remember, one of the high tech sciencey
Yeah, for
institutes. I don't
sure.
remember which one. Just like randomly wrote it on their calendar, and ever since then, like it's just spiraled into like existence. That December 14th is World Monkey Day,
Perfect.
so I love it. Um, our director is Alfonso Gomez Rejon. He's known for Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl, which has our uh Olivia,
Yeah.
yeah, our sweet
Um,
girl in it from Bates Motel. Olivia Cook. I could not remember her last name to save my
yes,
life.
Cook.
American Horror Story, State of Play, and The Eagle. I've only seen American Horror Story. I'm sure the rest are lovely.
Yeah, I mean, I've obviously heard of Mural and the Dying Girl. It's got really great
Right. Yeah.
feedback, but
Um, fun fact, when he was in school, he would, instead of giving like reports in front of class, he would borrow his friends' cameras and just make shorts to present instead of like presenting a report in class.
love
And
it.
I guess he got away with it because he's, made it. He was
Yeah.
personal assistant to Alejandro Gonzalez Inarritu, um, Robert De Niro, Nora Ephron, and Martin Scorsese.
What a combination of humans.
Right? Like you have done it. You reached all of the areas of the world to like
Yeah.
learn to be a director. So he has some good like names behind him. Our writers are all returning: Ryan Murphy, Brad Falchuk, Tim Minear. Our editors returning: Fabienne Buffy. But today I'm going to talk about one of our guest stars who is really a staple for American Horror Story because we just haven't made it to her yet. She is returning in every season of the show as of yet. Season 12 comes out in October. But as of yet, she is one of three returning characters of every season. Miss Sarah Paulson.
I forgot we hadn't talked about her yet.
I know. And in this iteration, she plays Billie Dean Howard. She's known for 12 Years a Slave, Run, American Horror Story, and Glass, which all have done well.
Yeah.
I haven't seen Glass yet. I've only seen Split, but that is
Mm.
one of my like series that I want to just like spend a day, like a Sunday, just knock out, go sit down and watch the entire thing
There's
because
what,
it
three
initially
now? Is
there
there
might be
three?
four now
Okay.
because there was the original one that I Breakable or Unbreakable, and then we
Yeah.
had Split, and then we had Glass that tied them in together or something,
Yeah.
right? And there might be another one that came out, or they've talked about another one coming out, or maybe another one's supposed to be tied in. Like I don't know, but yeah. So that's one I want to like just sit down and watch them all because I've only seen Split. Um, some fun facts. There are a lot of facts about how terrified she is of things. She's terrified of flying, and she has trypophobia, which is fear of holes.
Oh, I hate that
Her,
thing. I don't have
yeah,
that, but like when I see pictures of things about it, it freaks me out.
yeah, I agree. It's like always very weird. Like I get it when I
It
watch
is
it.
it is
When I
only
see
it
it.
is only a trilogy. Sorry, it is just Unbreakable,
Is
Split,
it okay?
and Glass. I think that there was something else. You're right. I remember them seeing
There
something
was like a
about something
rumor.
else coming out that was like related
Mm,
to it. But as of right now, I believe it is just those three.
interesting. Hmm, okay. Yeah. If you go on her IMDb, there's so many notes about like what and where her tattoos are. So if you want to know about her tattoos, go to IMDb. I did not list all of them on here. She technically grew up in Park Slope, which was like a little area over from where I moved when I moved to New York. She's from Florida, but they moved here, and her mom worked at Sardi's, which apparently is like the Broadway restaurant. I didn't know. I know
Oh yeah,
Kathy was very upset with me for not knowing what Sardi's was, but
I'm upset with you for
her.
not knowing what
Well,
Sardi's
I know
is.
now. I know now. I've never been. It's expensive.
It is expensive. I've
Um,
never been either. I didn't know what it
yeah,
is though.
yeah. So her mom worked there for ages when they first moved here to like support her and her sibling. I don't remember if she has a sister or brother. I think it's a sister. Um, But yeah, so that's that. And now we start with Constance passed out at home because in one of her drunk states. And we find out that it is actually a flashback because we see Tate as a child. Um, Tate is just playing with his little truck and he goes downstairs, he like rolls it down the stairs to the basement
Mm-hmm.
and he goes downstairs to grab his truck. And as soon as he bends under the table, this creepy thing comes out to get him.
This is the first time we
And
really get to like see the face of it though.
yeah, we see like a quick flash in a couple of the episodes, but never like in a ton of detail.
Yeah.
And Nora comes up and tells him to go away. And we learn that this thing is actually Thaddeus.
So cute.
Yeah,
So cute.
that's the exact definition I intended to use to explain Thaddeus. Um, yeah, and so she tells him, she sits him down, and essentially what he tells Violet in one of the early episodes, she's like, you just have to say, close your eyes and say, go away, and he will.
Yeah.
And he tells her that he wishes that she was his mom. And so now we see where their relationship starts.
Yeah.
So present day, Tate finds his old truck and he's finding Nora sobbing. So after all these years. And he does sit down with her and he tells her that he can no longer give her the baby because he's in love with Violet and he couldn't do that to her. Which, like, out of all the things, this is where you draw the line, Tate. Like,
Right.
just not stealing the baby that you've created that's like a demon child. Okay, that feels like a weird line to draw, but fine. Um, and Nora's not having it. She's like,
No.
look, you did your part and you can say all of these things. Still gonna take the baby. Nothing you can do
Uh-huh.
about it.
Yeah, no.
And then we get to the credits. So that's fun. And we start with Ben and Violet, and this is, oh God, this scene breaks my heart every time. So he's trying to drag her out of the house to go get Vivian because they're
Oh,
getting her,
yes.
they're going to take her back to Aunt Joe's, have a baby, etc.
Right.
Um, and she tells him she can't go. And he's like, you have to go. And he drags her out and he was like, you can lay down if you don't feel good, like just lay in the car. And she's like, great, okay. Finally, she gives in, knowing that it's not going to make a difference. And she lays down in the back seat and he pulls out. And as soon as he gets out of the like yard, we see that she's back in the window upstairs. And it is just one of the most heartbreaking scenes ever in my mind. Uh, and we've seen it similarly with like Moira, but
Yeah.
it's not the same. It's because she like is trying so hard for him to not be upset. And so Tate's talking to her and he's like, look, everything's fine. We're going to be fine. Like, it sucks, but it is what it is. So we're going to have this future. And she's like, what future? She's like, we can't have children. So then I'm like, oh my God, is he going to try and steal this child for them?
Probably.
That's my first thought at this point.
Yeah, for
Because
sure.
she's like, we're not going to have kids.
Yeah, no, I was
Um,
also like, cute.
yeah. So back at it, we have Chad and Patrick back in the picture. And they're decorating the nursery for Viv's kids. And Violet comes in and she's like, what are you doing? And he's like, hey, here's the nursery. Oh, she's like, who said you could decorate the nursery? And he's like, look, we did it. And we're going to take the kids. It's totally fine. They're only Vivian's for now, but we're going to have them. And she's like,
Yeah.
no, that doesn't sound right. And Chad is just
That's
like committed. He's like, did you have a C-section with you? Is there still like a zipper we can use to like for easy access to these babies? And I was like, that's not how babies work. You
Ew,
can't
that
just
is
steal a baby.
honestly the grossest thing.
Right? I was so distraught about it. So Tate comes in and he like is like, we can't do this. And he's of course moody, angsty teenage Tate, which
Yeah.
is always helpful. Um and so Violet does the next best thing she could think to do. She calls Constance over, which like is does have a correlation, but
Well,
like feels like a
I
shocker
mean,
strangely.
It's a strange thing, but also Constance is the only one who knows how to get in touch with Billy Dean, and she doesn't really need Constance
Right.
right now. She needs Billy Dean.
Exactly. Right. So she's telling Constance, Chad and Patrick's plan, and she's like, they're going to steal the baby. We can't have this happen. How do we get rid of him? We need your friend.
Yeah.
And
Constance
so,
Constance is like, let me take care of it first.
yeah, she's like, let me take care of it. And like, the thing is, Constance's issue is never that they're trying to steal the baby. She never says, oh, they can't steal the baby. She's mad that they're gay and trying to have a baby. That's the only thing she talks about in this scene. Eventually, she does come around to be
Oh,
mad about them
yeah.
stealing the baby.
But it's like she's A, acting mad homophobic, and B,
Absolutely.
is also mostly mad that they want her grandbaby. She's
Her
like,
baby.
you can have
Right.
the other fucking kid. I don't care if you ruin
Yeah.
that child, but my child, you can't ruin that child.
Yeah. Like, she is so ridiculous. And so she's talking to them, and she's like, I loved my children and this and that. And Chad just goes, yeah, to death. And I was like, Jesus Christ, he's got like these
He
comebacks. He's
he
very
was
snappy.
he was like the epitome of like the bitchy gay in this episode.
Yeah.
And like on the one hand, it makes sense for his character, but on the other hand, I just was kind of like, I feel like that's not a great portrayal because there's only two gay characters on the show, and one is like the unable to settle down, cheating on his partner, doesn't actually want
Mm-hmm.
kids, and one is like the stereotype of like flamboyant and bitchy. And I feel like
Right.
that's really shitty representation.
I 100% agree. This particular scene felt more like a flashback to last week whenever Larry came at her and she's like, he's twice the man you are. And he's like, well, he is now. And then we
Yeah,
have this one where she's like, I loved my children. He's like, to death.
to death.
So these both
Like,
kind of felt like quips at Constance. But in
yeah,
general, yes, I 100% agree with you
yeah,
that
because
this is a
if
weird
it
representation.
if it was just that scene, I would get it because Constance sucks. But he also talks to Violet that way, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
rude.
Yeah. And it's like, it's fine to demonize people in general. But if it's your only gay character, maybe don't use that against them.
Especially
Like,
with Ryan Murphy and what he is supposed to stand for, and with the
right.
kind of film he's trying to make. And I don't know. I
Yeah.
mean,
And I think,
I guess at the end of the day, there isn't a single likable character on the show. Like, there's
sure.
no one on the show that is like, oh, I love that person. Like, even the
Mm-hmm.
two characters that you're the most sympathetic for, which would be Vivian and Violet, still do some shitty things.
Right. And like at the same time, I also think there's meant to be an element of satire in it that sometimes comes across and sometimes doesn't. Because
Yeah,
you
because
see that
everyone is very much like a
stereotypical.
caricature. Yeah, it's like
Mm-hmm.
almost every character is a little bit of a caricature. So I guess that that's true that there is some satire. I just also
Yeah.
feel like 2011 was not
Not the time.
not the
Yeah.
time to like try to make some of your main characters gay, but then horrendously stereotype them.
Yeah. And I think it was miss a missed thing that Ryan Murphy was trying to be like, we're okay, people are gay now. And it's like it's yeah, yes, and no, they're still being horrendously treated. And I
Yeah.
think like you see watching like future seasons of American Horror Story, you see a lot of these caricatures, but they're tied in with other characters that aren't caricatures per se. And so you see that it's easier to see some of the satire in it that you don't that doesn't come across well in this episode, like because it doesn't come across well in this season.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
and I mean, I think about things like um obviously this is my guess based on not having actually watched those
mhm.
other seasons, but things like Coven or Freak Show, where the basis already is caricature, like this, like if we're
Yeah,
talking about people in a freak show, you're already starting with unrealistic characters. So you
right.
can do that and have it read better. In this one, it's harder because everyone is so human but then also not. And so like it sometimes that line of satire is not
Hmm.
walked well.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. And I think it's like it's much later seasons that you see him do a similar take on this in a satirical way that hits better. And it's
Yeah.
just from like I think from, trial and error. It's like he realized that this
That it didn't
season,
read.
while it did really well at the horror and thriller elements, it didn't necessarily read as well at the like coming across because he used Constance as the only like quote unquote older woman and she's so racist, homophobic. Like so you get this with her character and you don't
Right.
see anyone in her like in her generation like team differently, but it doesn't because it's not at a more protected class for, that it's not as ill taken, I guess. Because you
Right.
see her and you don't see like a counterpart to her, but it's not distasteful like it would be for like someone in the gay community or something like that.
Well, I mean, and even that, Constance, because she is so over the top with some of the things
Mm-hmm.
that she's saying, it reads better as a we're not supposed to like her.
Yeah.
Like you're supposed to think that what she's saying is absolutely ridiculous. Some of the more subtle satire just doesn't read
Mm-hmm.
as well. Like
Yeah, I
obviously, no,
agree.
we're not supposed to like Chad. Like that's
Yeah,
not.
yeah, sure.
But the thing is, he's not unlikable because he's like over the top racist, absolutely the worst person, or like murdering people. We just don't like him because he's kind of a bitch, and like
Right.
that doesn't feel the same as like disliking Larry for
Mm-hmm.
being a psycho or disliking Hayden for quite literally just like killing people for shits.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Nope, I absolutely agree. And yeah, because I think it was meant to be, it feels to me like Chad and Patrick were meant to be kind of a parallel to the worst that could come out of Viv and Ben. But it,
Which I think would have worked better if they weren't a gay couple because I don't
yeah.
think it parallels the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when it then like I think it's later in the episode where Tate is like, which one of you is going to be the mom? And it's
Yeah.
like I get that Tate's trying to fuck with them, but they also are already stereotyping themselves in that very like masculine
Mm-hmm.
versus feminine thing, and I don't like it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think Ryan Murphy does come out and redeem himself in some later. I mean, one of the later seasons is essentially a comment on the AIDS epidemic in New York in the 80s. And so it's
Yeah.
mostly, gay men. And you see a much better representation and much better because I mean, sure, there are people like this because there's people
Yeah.
of the bad
Well,
ilk
no,
everywhere. But you have to
here's the thing.
see all stereotypes.
There are very few stereotypes that come from nowhere. Stereotypes
Yeah.
exist because at some point with some person, they were reality and they've been exaggerated often, but a stereotype isn't made up. It's just exaggerated and offensive, and kind
Yeah.
of like, what's the word? Overgeneralization.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
that doesn't mean that there aren't gay men who act like that. In fact, I know quite a few of them.
Sure.
But I just don't.
The
This
representation isn't there in the season to
the
like let it
representation,
go.
this portrayal of the only
Mm-hmm.
gay main characters could not happen in 2023
Yeah.
without him absolutely being ripped to shreds.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. Um, yep. I think that is a great point. Um, but because he is considered a terrible human in
Yeah.
this episode, she is telling them to split the babies up, and he says, "Oh no, we're gonna wait till they're one and then just smother them so we can have them at their cute age." I was like, "Oh, that's not great, Chad."
That was the final straw for me on him ever having any redeeming qualities.
Right? Exactly. Absolutely. But then we do go to Billie Dean, who is back, and she just walks into the house and has all of these terrible feelings. Like everything around her is horrible. And
Yeah.
so that's not great. But immediately we do see that she does have these like medium powers because the first thing she notices is that Violet's dead.
Oh my
And
God,
like,
that like silent conversation between her and Violet, where Violet was like, "Please don't tell Constance." Like, I wanted to cry all over again.
I know it's because Violet's trying so hard to just like pretend like she's not dead and not let the world know she's dead. And Billy Dean is just
Mostly because of her parents find out it.
right.
Oh,
And Billy Dean just pities her, and you can feel the pity in her voice and like the sadness. And she's feeling the sadness coming from um, Violet as an empath, but also knowing that this story is just
right.
doesn't have a happy ending.
Right. And knowing because she has these medium abilities, she knows that Violet, like, she would know immediately that Violet killed herself and that it was not like that it was awful.
Yeah,
And like the first thing she says is, "I am so sorry. You're so young."
I know. Oh God, it's so sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then they're asking about how to get rid of Patrick and Chad, and Billy Dean says it's hard to target a certain spirit. And she also says the house itself is a spirit, and she's like, it's just feeding off of these people who have died here. It's
Yeah.
not necessarily just these people that you're having to fight against. Um, and then out of nowhere, she just says he can't be here.
As
And it
Tate walked in
turns
the
out
room.
that Tate's walked in their room, and he's saying he just wants to help. And Violet's like, why can't he be here? What's happening? And Constance, not knowing anything, she's like, sometimes when the medium comes like into contact directly with the spirit, it's too overpowering. I was like, or that spirit is kind of a monster, and
Correct.
that's a
The
bit
spirit is
overpowering and overwhelming.
awful. Yeah. The spirit sucks.
So, yeah, so maybe it's a little more of that, but it's fine. So we get to the psych ward, and Ben's picking up Vivian, finally.
Right.
And he's like, great, let's get everything packed up. And she's like, I don't want to go in the house. And he's like, no problem. We'll get you packed up. We'll go get Violet and go straight to Joe's.
Yeah.
And the doctor comes in, and it turns out that she's basically about to have the babies like right now. And he's like, you better hope there's a doctor because you're going to need an immediate C-section if you try to
Yeah.
go anywhere. And you shouldn't travel at all.
And it turns out that there's an issue with the babies where one of them is overly developing and the other one isn't because of the nutrients like feeding from the twins. And that's also, obviously, we know it's because of some weird fucking spooky shit, but that's also another thing that actually can happen with twins.
which is so sad and terrifying. Like,
Right.
oh gosh, like I don't want kids, so I should be okay. But I could just imagine that, like, if I was gonna have twins, that's all I would think about. That's
Yeah.
all I would think about until they were born. I'd be like, one of them is gonna kill the other any minute. Like, it's only gonna go badly.
Well,
I know you might have twins.
yeah, I was like, my chance of having twins is significantly higher.
I would never say that to you while you were
So,
pregnant, just before.
thanks to this show, I will be constantly panicked that my child is actually a demon eating its sibling in
Yeah.
utero.
Yeah, it's totally possible. I mean, it
Um,
probably won't happen, but never say never.
I mean, I also will not like be pregnant by a dead person wearing a rubber suit. So,
I mean, probably. Nothing's ever like 100% not certain.
that's true, but I think even in the real world, even in all of the like supposed alleged actual sexual encounters with ghosts, I'm 98% sure no one's ever gotten pregnant by a ghost.
That's true. I don't think I've heard of that yet. So
Yeah, so I think I should
I'll
be
do some
safe.
research.
Okay.
I think you should be safe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so what was I? Yeah. So then we go back to Billie Dean, and she's talking about how hard it is to banish a spirit. And then, in true American Horror Story fashion, she goes on and tells the story of Roanoke.
Yes.
And she's like, this is how you have to do this. She's like, you have to find something that means something to the spirit, throw it in the fire, and yell the magic word, Croatoan. And we will return to talk more about Roanoke in the future.
Yeah.
So she learns all of this, and Violet's going to talk to Tate about it, figure things out. And this is where we're still not sure what he knows or what he's pretending to not know, because he's saying, I did something bad, didn't I? And she just like looks at him and he still won't admit it. And maybe he's like trauma blocked it, or maybe he knows and
Like
just doesn't want to
trauma
admit it.
blocking the Columbine-ness of it all, fine. But
Mhm.
are you really going to tell me that you're trauma blocking that and murdering at least six people that we're aware of
Oh, sure. No,
and
I
two
don't think
died?
he's upset about that. I
Right.
don't
Like
think
so
that's
far,
what he's
we know
upset.
for a fact that he's killed um, Chad and Pat. We know for a fact
Mhm.
that he has killed the exterminator. He has for sure killed the three people who came to attack Violet and Vivian. So
Mhm.
that's six that we're 100% convinced of.
And that he
Um,
definitely remembers. Like,
yeah, and oh yeah, he raped your mother
yeah,
and tried to murder her and tried to murder your father.
right, right.
So like
Yeah.
six murders, one rape, and two attempted murders on top of the fact that you shot up your school. Um,
Mhm.
oh, and set a man on fire in broad daylight.
So, like, even if you didn't remember the event that brought your death on, there's a lot of other things you've done
That's a
to
lot
be upset
happening.
about. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then he, after this, goes to talk to Patrick, and he's being super offensive as he does,
Yeah.
and then starts trying to seduce him because he's trying to get his ring, which is meant to be important. And Patrick, at first, you're not really sure what's going to happen. And then Patrick just like waylays him. He comes, and I was like, that is the correct response, Patrick.
He
Like,
baits the
you're also not a
shit.
great person, but
But then we find
kudos for
out
that.
from that Patrick was going to ask Chad for a divorce. He was ready to
Because
leave and
yeah.
he had met
And he
someone
was in
else.
love with someone else.
And now he has to spend his entirety of his afterlife trapped in a marriage that he was trying to get out of.
And that's when Chad walks in and hears everything. And it's so heartbreaking. Like, I hate all of these people so much, and I'm so sad for every one of them. Like, it
Mm-hmm.
just doesn't matter. Everything is devastating and
Yeah,
awful. No good,
correct.
no good of
No.
anywhere. So we go to Viv and Ben, who are getting to the house, and Vivian just refuses to go inside. And I was like, yeah, totes get that. Totes okay. And
Yeah.
so Ben goes inside to grab the bag and grab Violet, and she starts having contractions. And they are like bad. So uh so Violet, when Ben comes inside, Violet tells him to leave. She's like, great plan. Go to Aunt Joe's. I have to stay. You have to go. And of course, he's her father, so he's like, absolutely not. And then finally she tells him she can't leave the house because she's dead. And
And
he
she's
tries
like,
to drag her
don't.
out anyways.
And she's like, don't you get it? Like, don't you understand what's going on in this house? Like, don't you see it?
Yeah.
And of course he fucking doesn't.
No, because that sounds crazy. So of course he doesn't believe that.
Right, but literally
Then
everyone you've interacted with in the last 9 months of your life isn't alive.
is dead. Right. Yeah.
You
Except
you
Constance.
watched you watched Larry murder Hayden and you put a gazebo over her body. And then she showed up at your house and you still don't get it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not the brightest. So we come back to outside, and Vivian is like falling out of the car, and
Yeah.
Constance, of course, shows up to like catch her and
Yeah.
bring her back inside. And she's bringing her in the house, and Vivian's like, absolutely not. I
Ugh.
will stay out
She
here.
was like, I
And
will not have birth in this house. And Constance is like, well, too late.
yeah, so they go inside. She's in labor, and Constance just looks at Violet, and she's like, you know what you need to do? Make it safe. I was like, first of all, you already heard you have a year to make it safe. So I don't know why you're in a rush now, because they're not killing the babies for a year. I mean, still like as soon as possible to get rid of them would be great, but this may
Right.
not be the moment.
Also, no offense, Constance. I get your hang up here, but I can think of like eight other spirits who are more of a threat to this baby than the gay men who just want to raise children.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, yeah, so
Like, for
because they're
instance,
talking
the
about
other eight of them who want to steal the baby. I can't think of anybody in the house
sure,
who isn't trying to steal the baby. Hayden wants the baby. Nora wants the baby. I feel like Lorraine probably would be like, great, a new baby, I'll take it. Like, you know what
right.
I mean? Like,
The nurses. The nurses are just there to help. Make sure everyone stays safe.
Here's the thing. If the nurses were there, just the nurses to help, I would honestly be like, great. Because the nurses, from what we've seen, they don't really have a lot of malevolence. They haven't really hurt anyone since they've been there.
No.
They were just genuinely good nurses.
Yeah.
The problem is the nurses aren't alone.
Right.
The person delivering the child is probably the
Is a
last
monster.
spirit in the house that I would let touch a child. Like, I would rather Tate deliver the baby than fucking
Yeah.
Dr. Charles.
Yeah. Because at least you know he doesn't want it dead, and Dr. Charles might want to create a monster with it. You don't know. You
Right.
have no idea what his intentions are. Yeah. But so Viv's gone into labor and they're talking about trying to leave the house, and you hear this like smashing, and the twins are just smashing the car to pieces. Like, it is not drivable.
Reason.
Yeah. Well, they're trying to keep them in the house. The spirit of the house is trying to keep them here. So they're destroying the car so they don't have a means of leaving. So Ben's basically like in a trance. Like, this whole time. He's like at a loss for what's happening.
Well, and also, so in I think it was like episode 2 or 3, whichever episode she actually has sex with the rubber man. When Ben is trying to light the house on fire, Constance is like, "It's not your time." And then in this episode, she just says, "It's your time now."
It's your time.
And then,
Yeah.
fuck it. What does that even mean?
Yeah. Well, it turns out it means the babies are being born. So the whole
Is that what
staff,
it means? Is that what it means? Because I don't think that's what it means.
Yeah. There's no telling yet, but the whole medical staff jumps in, as we mentioned. And Viv's like, I don't know any of these people. Like, she's rightfully terrified.
Right.
She's like, all these dead people came out of nowhere to like take my baby out of my body. And Ben's just like, no, it's fine. Let's do this. Like, he's just like moving through this like shock of like everything that's happening. And then we do have a quick flashback back and forth to Violet's birth while this is happening. And while she's having the baby and having these like flashbacks and going back and forth, in present day, she finally looks at Ben and she's just like, I never wanted to lose you. Which is so sad.
So
like,
sad.
Because he was a good dad, and when he wasn't cheating, he seemed to be a good husband. Like, he's not.
And honestly, he fought so hard to prove that what happened with Hayden was a mistake, and he like all the stuff that he was trying to do. And honestly, if they had gone literally anywhere but this fucking house to repair their marriage, they would be fine.
Absolutely. 100%. And they would have overcome everything.
Yeah. And their child would not be dead.
Yeah. And then the first baby is born stillborn, which is so devastating, but honestly, probably what Nora wanted, because it's immediately taken and handed to Nora, who now has her dead ghost baby that she always wanted. And so Violet goes.
I somehow missed that that the stillborn got handed to Nora.
It got.
I knew that it was wrapped up and that they said it was stillborn, but like I must have looked down right at the moment where they actually handed it to Nora, because I missed that piece. It makes perfect sense. Perfect sense that that's where it ended up. I missed it.
It was very brief and very dark, so it was like kind of like happened in the shadows type moment, which was
which cool, again makes sense.
Not great. Yeah. So Violet's downstairs with the furnace. And Chad comes up and she's throwing the ring into the fire, and he's like, oh my God, that was like $12,000 or whatever. It was, I think that was it. It was an insane amount. Yeah. And she starts yelling, Croatoan, Croatoan, Croatoan. And he does this whole like facade of like pretending to like, gag. Yeah. And then he's like, yeah, that doesn't work. It's like, okay. So
now here's the thing. Like, does it actually not work? Or like, was that not the correct totem?
Right. Well, we don't know.
Because that was my thought when it first happened. I was like, if these two are like stuck in death in a miserably unhappy marriage, why would their totem be their wedding ring? Like, that doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, I could see it maybe being for Chad, but I could see it not for Patrick, because at most it's a chain holding him back. So destroying it is like good for him. But also, like, I
Correct.
don't know what else it would be. Like,
Mm,
unless you threw Patrick into the fire and yelled Croatoan, like, what would be the other thing that would send Chad off, you know?
yeah, fair. No, that's
Yeah.
totally fair. I
Yeah.
also,
And maybe they
I,
don't have anything that would
right.
work.
Maybe, like, what if a totem isn't something you choose? Like, what if it actually has nothing to do with what you would think it would be, and it's happens to be like, what if it's the fucking bucket that he was bobbing apples in when he died, just because it was the item
True.
that was closest to him? Like, we haven't gotten nearly enough information to have any idea if Billy Dean like made shit up or if there's just a lot of missing links in that story.
Yeah. Or if it was very specific to certain locations, or if like the house cancels it out because the house is
Or
its own
right, or like
spirit, you know?
what if that is the process, but the word itself isn't that because it has nothing to do because
Yeah.
it was something that had to do with what happened to them or like
Yeah.
we know
Very
nothing.
true. Yeah. Um, but what we do know is it didn't work. And so
Correct.
she's like losing her mind and going crazy. And finally, he's just like, look, the babies are safe. Patrick clearly doesn't want to have a kid with me. We're not going to go after them. He's not in
Yeah.
love with me anymore. He's like, also, we're not your only threat, but they're safe from us. And he's
Yeah.
like, and one thing is like, we're going to move on from this, but it, like, and this baby is going to be whatever it's going to be. But that
Yeah.
never changes that Tate is a
Yeah.
monster.
He was like, I might be stuck in eternity with a partner who doesn't love me, but you're stuck in eternity with a partner who loves you and will never stop being a terrible person.
Yeah. And this is where she finds out that Tate's the one that raped Viv because he just like off the cuff said
She
it.
also finds out that he killed Chad and Patrick.
Yeah. Yeah. And which like isn't great, but I feel like that effect was less effective to her. It's like,
Oh,
in
no,
my
for sure. But
opinion.
like, it's also, she already knew why he died. She already knew he
Mhm.
started as a bad person, but she almost believed him that it didn't continue on to his death. But then she finds out that not only did he murder Chad and Patrick, which was only what, 6 months before she moved into the
Yeah.
house, then when she moved into the house. So, like, that's two atrocities that weren't to quote unquote protect her, like she thinks the other ones were
Yeah.
since like in the last year. That's a lot.
Yep. That's quite a lot. Yeah. And we go back to Viv, who's, giving birth to the second baby, and there's so much blood. And this scene is so mm, beautifully, horrifically done
Yeah. Yeah.
that it's like one of the more emotional ones because you hear all of the sound shuts off and you just hear the heartbeat. And the only
Yeah.
thing that brings you back into the scene from the silence is Viv screaming. And then it brings you back into the like scene again. And it is so sad. And as soon as this baby's born, she's like, can I hold him? And Constance immediately grabs him. She's like,
Yeah.
I'm going to clean him up and then I'll bring it back. But so then she brings him into the kitchen and Moira comes to see him and she's crying and she's like, he's perfect. And Constance has one of
Oh,
the like creepiest lines. She's like,
yeah.
from blood and pain come perfection. And I was like,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
feels not correct, but
No, but
okay.
I think it is. I don't think it's creepy. I think it's a very, very kind of old-fashioned, but
Mm-hmm.
really powerful explanation of what life is and giving
Oh
birth
yeah.
and the idea that like we only get to be good by going through it. We only get to have these beautiful, innocent creatures by the
Yeah.
worst pain of our lives. Like, I didn't find it creepy at all. I found it like to be one of the moment of the two of them looking at this baby and like bonding over it and crying over like the purity that is womanhood that neither of them can experience anymore. I thought that was like one of the most beautiful moments of the episode.
So I see what you're saying,
I mean,
but I see it
it doesn't help that the baby is probably the Antichrist. Like that's
right. Like I
um
think I went into a darker space because while what you're saying is absolutely correct and definitely like probably something meant to be during this scene, I see it from the opposite of like this baby wouldn't have been created had there not been rape. This baby would not have been created had my son not become a ghost and died. Like, and then this baby is
well,
being created from all of this blood and this pain that is unnecessary because it's brought on by the house and not necessarily a traditional
I
childbirth.
no, and I get that. And obviously there is the darkness to it. But
Hmm.
I think, and I don't know where the show is going. I don't know how they're going to wrap it up. I don't know what next episode is going to be like. I don't know if we leave with still no answers on certain things. But I think that at the end of the day, all Constance ever wanted was to be a good mom.
Yeah,
I think that's I
I
think
absolutely
I think
agree.
that's all she ever wanted. And she had three kids, two of whom were physically and mentally deformed, one of whom
As a
from a very
psychopath.
from a very young age was not a good person. Her
Hmm.
husband left her, and everything that she ever loved was connected to this house that
Yeah.
was also rotting people from the inside out. And I think that prior to the house, all she ever wanted was to be a good mom. And in her mind, this house has given her back that chance to like fix her mistakes. And she genuinely sees it as an opportunity to take all of the shit she has been through and all of the pain of everyone around her and have one more chance at
Yeah.
perfection. And
Yeah.
so
No,
I,
100% agree with
and
that. Like,
so yes,
I
there is obviously a ton of darkness to it, but I thought that moment was beautiful because I think that that desire is Constance's only redeeming quality.
I do agree with that. I think it was beautiful for Constance for that moment. Um, I think there's just a lot of other bad stuff that is
Nothing
bad.
else in the episode was happy. There was not
Right.
another single moment of this episode
But
where I
yeah.
felt good about the show.
Yeah, no. But yeah, and then Hayden comes in to steal the baby, as you do. And we go back and we learn that Vivian's bleeding out and they can't get it to stop.
Well,
And
yeah,
so Violet,
because it's a doctor from the 1920s giving her ether, and also he's dead.
yeah, yeah. So it's
The
not like a
medical the
good
med the
circumstances.
medical care of obstetricians in the 1920s, not exactly great. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, not
Um,
great.
what was the
So with
peri mortality rate in 1920?
not good, I would imagine. Yeah, I don't know what it was, but yeah, definitely not a good medical field for them to be in, and nothing sterile, nothing safe, I'm sure is
Oh,
used.
wow.
Worse
The
than you
rate,
expected.
yeah.
Hmm.
Um, the 1920s saw the ascendancy of the obstetricianal profession. Like that's where we started having more obstetricians.
Hmm.
But due to men joining the obstetrician field and trying to turn
Sure.
giving birth into a medical thing that women haven't, been doing since the beginning of time,
Sure.
the mortality rate of the maternal mortality rate in 1920s was 9,000 deaths per every, or 900 deaths per every 10,000 women.
Yeah, that's like 9%,
Yeah,
which feels pretty high.
right. Whereas right now, 32.9 for every 10,000.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like less
Literally
or less
30
than one
times
per
higher.
10,000. Yeah.
Yeah, it's 30 times higher. It was 30 times higher than it
Hmm.
is now.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
this is
Which,
America. Like, I'm not even talking about third world countries.
yeah, yeah. Which leads us into our other heartbreaking scene where Violet shows up and she starts telling her, if you're in pain, let go and you can be with me. And Ben is begging her not to let go. And finally, Vivian's just like, I don't think I have a choice. And yeah, so everyone's dying. Violet goes and tells Tate that Vivian's dead. And then she confronts him. And we learn here that he knew all along he was dead and how he died, but still won't admit that he killed those kids, which we talked about in the
Yeah.
last episode. I think I also combined these scenes with the one we had previously. So sorry, that happened in this episode, not the last.
Oh, shit, did it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, good. Great. I definitely
Um,
thought it happened in the last episode.
it's fine. I also did. She tells him that he's the darkness, and she goes up close to him and she finally says, I love you, Tate, but I can't forgive you.
Yeah, she says, I thought you were like me and that you were also just attracted to the darkness, but I think
Yeah.
I've learned that you are the darkness. Like you are all the bad things that have happened in my life. And that is so sad. So true. Like absolutely
Right.
deserved,
Right.
but heartbreaking.
Yeah. And she finally, because of what he taught her and because of what Nora taught him, she closes her eyes and yells, "Go away." And he does. But then Viv is there to take care of her. And she's like, "I'm so sorry you lost your baby. I'm so sorry this happened." And Vivian just says, "But I didn't lose my baby."
Sister on the forehead.
Oh, this is, oh gosh. I cannot. The show. It's like
Yeah.
roller coaster of emotions constantly.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so and that's where we ended.
And
Um
there's only one more episode left.
yeah, so I'm gonna give you some trivia, some goofs, will punch some people, and then I want to hear your thoughts. For trivia, the cigarettes that Violet smokes are called Morley, which are the same brand as the cigarettes that Cancer Man smokes in X-Files.
Oh,
Fun
good.
fact, I just listened to an episode, and like a Patreon episode, and that's why we drink, because
Yeah.
M used to work on these products and stuff and work for ISS, which was a company that
That's like
did the
fake
branding for
prop
shows.
branding for
Yeah.
fake props and stuff. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That is the wildest, most interesting field I've ever heard of in my life. I didn't like,
Oh,
I knew like in my head that happened, but hearing about it like explained for like 20 minutes makes me want to go on a deep dive into all of these like brands
yeah.
and pay so much more attention to like these
Yeah.
products that are not real products. And wow, wild. Um
Well, because
so
sometimes people use real products, but when you use real products, you have to pay like advertising
right.
fees or sponsorship fees, or people pay you to put your products in there. But then there's the two brackets to it. There's the we don't have the money for it, so we need to make something up, or there's the like um if you like pay attention to like Damon Lindelof shows like Lost and Once Upon a Time and like all the stuff that Eddie Kitsis and Adam Horowitz and Damon Lindelof do, they all share products specifically as like Easter eggs and connections to worlds and like
Yeah.
they do, and it's fascinating.
Yeah. It's wild. I love it. It's my new favorite thing about TV. So
Perfect.
hopefully I'll have some notes going forward about that. Also, the other piece of trivia, so there's always a hint to the premise of the next season in
Mhm.
every season of American Horror Story. Did
So
you
was
have do you
Roanoke was
know the
Roanoke
premise?
was Roanoke supposed to be next then?
No.
Oh, okay. I just thought that them talking about Roanoke would have led up to that.
There's a lot from season one that alludes to a lot of future seasons.
Okay.
But they do have a brief mention. Do you know what season two is?
Asylum.
Okay, so did you catch the quick reference Billie Dean mentioned Asylum?
No, I didn't.
In her one of her like floral talks that she does where she goes into all these details, she briefly mentioned like people in an asylum. And that was meant to
Okay.
be like your Easter egg moving into season two.
Oh, okay.
But
I feel like I would have been more satisfied if Roanoke was season two based on the way that they
yeah.
hinted at it. Not that I've heard Roanoke's not a great season, so like no also no, but like
Well,
based on what she talked about, I would have been way more satisfied for Easter eggs if Roanoke came next.
yeah, or even if like what was the story about the Pope's tears or Pope's box or whatever, like if
Oh
that turned
yeah.
into a season, you know?
That would have been fucking
Yeah,
fascinating to go like more into
right.
the Pope and the Antichrist.
Yeah. So but yeah. So there were a couple of goofs. When Tate's a child, it's 1984, and he was wearing Shack Attack sneakers, and Shaq was 12 in 1984, so they did not exist yet. Um,
Correct. Yeah, that's a thing.
and then if you look at Constance's mail, which I'm sure everyone did very closely, they have the right address on all of them, but two of them have different zip codes,
Good.
putting them in completely
Great.
different areas of California, which is fun.
Love it.
So, with that said, who do you want to punch in the face?
This is hard because I think there were quite a few people who did some really
Mm-hmm.
shitty things in this episode. Um, and some of them were like more atrocious than others. But like there are things like Tate had a really bad story arc in this episode, but it was all based on things he had done previous to this. It wasn't anything that he did this episode. And in this episode, other than like it turning out that he did know and kind of lying to Violet, it wasn't really anything he did right now. Whereas some of the other people like actively did shitty things in this episode. So for that, I think despite maybe not deserving it as much, I think I'm gonna go with Chad just because I really did not care for his attitude towards literally anyone in this episode.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And that's fair. I went with Constance
Also,
because while she
also
had
fair.
her moments of levity, she was just like terrible. And some of them were flashbacks. I mean, it showed she was a bad mother when she was like sleeping off her drinking and Tate was getting almost killed in the basement by Thaddeus.
Right,
And then we come to like present
but
day.
also to be fair, like to be fair to her, if this was 1984 when Tate was sleeping, when she was sleeping off her drunkenness, this was literally what 47 minutes after her husband left her and she killed him in
Right.
Moira and she was like coping. Doesn't mean that it's good that she coped that way, but also like
Yeah.
it doesn't mean she was just like a shitty mom from the get-go.
Right. But I don't think that trend ended, which is where I think
No,
she
no,
followed through.
I don't think it did based on the things that Tate said at the dinner
Yeah.
table in the last episode, but also I do feel a little bit bad for her.
Yeah, no, and that's fair. And it's like as a one-off, I would not hold it against her. But it's on top of everything else. And she's very clearly trying to steal the babies. She doesn't care about both babies. She's fine if one of them dies, which is like not nice at all. She's really homophobic to Chad and Patrick. She's,
Yeah,
you know, she's just not a good person. And I
no,
feel like she had a lot of moments this episode where she was not a good person. So I just wanted to punch her.
that's
Um,
also fair.
who's your MVP?
Violet. She she gave up like the one thing that has been her constant for like the last 9 months to protect her family.
Mm.
And at the end of the day, she realized how much of the problems were her fault and how much weren't, and like was able to like come to terms with that and like her girl.
So I was split, and I was hoping you were going to pick one of these people, but you didn't. So I'm going to say them both. Um, one of them is Billie Dean, who, while she didn't have an ongoing presence and didn't really have an effect per se, she was the only one who knew Violet was dead and actually was like there and sad for her.
Yeah,
But probably more so would be Vivian
that's fair.
because
I was split between Vi and Viv.
yeah, because in the end, I mean, she went through a lot this episode, first of all, but her
Mhm.
first concern was always protecting her children, and it was all of them. So, like, knowing she couldn't do anything about her dead child or the one that lived, that she's now dead, she still protected Violet, and she didn't like forget about her just because she is dead or just because she has these other two tragedies with her baby. She still
Yeah.
put her first when you know she's going through some kind of emotional turmoil.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
totally fair.
probably Vivian would be my MVP overall.
I do think Billie Dean was great this episode, but I just think Vi and
Yeah,
Viv both went through so much this episode
they
that
did. They did. So, as you noted, we have one episode left before we do our wrap up. And what are your thoughts? What are you thinking? Do you have some predictions for how we're going to tie it up? Where are we going?
we truly do not, because the last two episodes just were such an emotional roller coaster for me. I genuinely cannot think of any way for this to wrap up in an episode. Like there's just so much that just happened that I don't know where it could go. There's I don't think there's any way that it wraps up in a way that like feels like it's over.
Yeah. Um, which is fair because it's not. I'll tell you, um, there are plenty of things wrapped up next episode, but this season comes into play in, at least off the top of my head, 4 other seasons of American Horror Story.
Just
Um,
fair. And I get that. And I know that despite the show being anthologized, it's also not. And I do get that. But I just feel like if they're expecting each season to be its own story, there's got to be more closure than I think they can do in an hour.
yeah, and I think that's a fair way to feel. I did feel closure at the
Okay.
end. But it is, especially especially with the way things have gone, fair to imagine you won't. And you may not feel closure at the end. It may, because people feel differently. But I
Yeah.
did feel closure when I finished it, knowing, and I mean, I knew some of the stuff that came back, but I didn't even know everything that came back
Right.
when I finished it. And so I think it wraps up well in my opinion, but we'll
Okay.
see next week.
All right. I guess.
So
Do I
yeah,
get
so
do I get any kind of little mini spoiler or no because it's the finale and it's just too much?
oh, let me see if I can give like a an off the wall spoilery that's
I mean,
because like there's
I do know what the title is of the episode.
yeah, I mean it's
But
afterbirth, which is like I mean sure it's after
right,
the
like
birth. We have like
yeah,
yeah.
chapter 11 was birth, 12 is the
Mhm.
finale, and it's afterbirth. Like that's not really spoilery at all.
Right. That doesn't really I mean you just know what happens after the birth,
To be fair,
obviously.
I don't think I think the only episode title that was spoilery in my mind was Rubber Man.
Rubber Man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Let's see. Season 1, episode 12. Do, 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 do. Yeah, I don't really know how to like to tell you anything about it. But
Okay. That's fair.
so just stay tuned. It's an interesting journey next episode.
Okay.
Yeah, so if
Is it a regular length episode or is it longer?
I think it's regularly. I
Okay.
didn't even look at that.
Because
So that's like
I know the Stargate finale is, but I also know that they didn't often do like huge two-part finale time zone, like double block of TV back in 2000.
yeah.
So,
Um it's not gonna tell me. Oh, I'm because I clicked on plot. It's 52 minutes, yeah. It's
oh, okay, so
still
it's normal.
still normal times. Still normal
That's
times.
good.
Yeah, so
That's
if you
good.
want to talk to us, if you want to tell us your feelings or predictions, if you haven't seen the finale, and you have thoughts, if you want to talk about any of the other American Horror Stories and have thoughts based on the season, you can reach out to me directly. But otherwise, you can email us deathandaliens@gmail.com. You can find us on all of the social media at Death and Aliens. You can find me everywhere at CECloud13.
You can follow me everywhere at EMKAY_superstar.
And we'll see you for our Sci-Fi Sunday Stargate SG1 Season 3 finale.
Woo woo! Bye.